Sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, casting a soft glow on the walls adorned with framed photographs, each immortalizing a moment shared with a past client. The air carried a faint scent of lavender mingled with the rich undertone of old books, a familiar comfort that felt increasingly hollow. Quentin sat at his cluttered desk, fingers tracing the lines of case notes, half-formed thoughts spiraling in his mind. Outside, the distant croak of frogs from the edge of undaunted swamp cut through the stillness, a haunting reminder of the troubles that lingered just beyond his reach, waiting patiently to ensnare him once more. Quentin leaned back in his chair, the weight of his past pressing down like an iron shroud. His gaze drifted to a photograph of a young woman with bright eyes and an infectious smile, now frozen in time. Her laughter still echoed in the corners of his mind, a melody laced with regret. He remembered how he'd failed her during their sessions, how each visit had ended with a gentle smile that masked her deepening despair. The pulse of guilt throbbed in his chest, a relentless reminder of the darkness that had claimed her life, and he clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to bury his face in his hands. "You can't save everyone," he whispered to the empty room, but the words felt like a betrayal, a concession to his perceived inadequacy. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor, cutting through the suffocating silence. As he paced the length of the office, he ran his fingers along the spines of the books lining the shelves, each one a testament to the knowledge he had accumulated yet felt unworthy to wield. The air felt denser, thickening as thoughts of impending doom loomed down dead like a storm cloud. Outside, the murmur of the swamp seemed to rise, the calls of unseen creatures, a sinister chorus. "What if I fail them too?" he murmured, the words slipping past his lips before he could swallow them back, the anxiety spiraling deeper. He paused by the window, staring out at the curtain of mist hanging over the swamp, its gnarled trees reaching out like skeletal fingers to grasp at the fading light. The world dode reflected his inner turmoil, a place of secrets and unresolved struggles. Quentin pressed his forehead against the cold glass, wishing he could break through the barrier that separated Tib from that wilderness of despair. He turned, his breath unsteady, knowing that if he did not confront his own pain, he might lose himself entirely to the shadows lurking in the depths of that cursed place. Resolute yet trembling, Quentin returned to his desk, as if the act of sitting could anchor him against the tide of memories. The photographs seemed to flicker in the soft light, each one a silent plea for redemption. He picked up a pen, the cool weight a reminder of the responsibility he bore, not just for others, but for himself as well. With a deep breath, he began to write, the ink flowing like a lifeline, a promise to himself that he would retreat into the shadows again. Somewhere in the distance, the swamp called to him, a siren song that urged him to confront the darkness. And thus, he steeled himself for the journey ahead, a path that might lead him back to the healing he so desperately sought, both for himself and for those he had failed. The town square buzzed with an undercurrent of anxiety, a stark contrast to the warm golden light that filtered through the early afternoon sky. Might stalls, laden with vibrantly colored produce, stood in stark juxtaposition to the pallor of the townsfolk clustered like moths around flickering lanterns. Quentin Tamsin moved through this web of whispered fears, his athletic frame slightly hunched, each step a physical manifestation of the weight resting heavily on his heart. The air was thick with the scent of fresh bread, mingling with the tang of sweat and worry. And locals exchanged shadowed glances, their conversations dipping into hushed tones when his presence broke their flow. Murmurs of illness hung in the atmosphere, palpable of the humidity that clung to Quentin's skin, and the distant cawl of the swamp lurked just beyond the edges of his consciousness, beckoning him back to its dark embrace. Quentin stopped short as he spotted Hawke leaning against a stone wall, his stocky fay casting a long shadow across the cobblestones. The man-piercing blue eyes met Quentin, and for a moment the world around them faded into a muted hum. "You feel it too, don't you?" Thorne voice, gravelly and low, cut through the tension. "Something stirring in the swamp. People are getting sick, and it's not just the change in the weather. It's something deeper, ancient." Quentin shifted his weight, the sachet slung over his shoulder feeling heavier as dread pooled in his stomach. He wanted to deny it, to push the fear aside, but the truth of Thorne's words resonated with a chilling clarity. Thorne pushed himself off the wall, his broad shoulders squared as he stepped closer, the scent of earth and smoke lingering in his wake. "You've seen it before, Quentin. The signs in the trees, the old stories. They're waking Oak. We can't just stand by and let it happen again." Quentin felt the heat rising to his cheeks, grappling with a familiar knot of self-doubt. The swamp-locked grip on his past was a relentless specter, taunting him with visions of failure. But what can we do? I'm not the man I used to be. I can't afford to make another mistake. What if it's worse than we think? Thorne's expression softened slightly, his missing pinky finger a stark reminder of the dangers they faced.
No one asking you to be a hero, Quentin.
Just a step forward. If we don't confront this together, we might lose more than just another neighbor to the shadows. You've got the heart for it. Trust that. Trust yourself. Quentin breath hitch, the weight of Thorne faith filling the void of his insecurity. The thought of the community, struggling and scared, ignited a flicker of determination within him, a flame fighting against the suffocating darkness that threatened to engulf him. As the last light of day began to fade, Quentin glanced back toward the mist-shrouded swamp, the gnarled trees whispering secrets he could almost understand. He felt the pull, an entwine of fear and responsibility that urged him to move forward. With a deep breath, he turned to Thorne, their eyes locking in silent agreement. The decision was made: they must return to the swamp, to confront the soul of the illness, and perhaps, in doing so, he could find redemption not just for himself, but for an entire community. But as they stepped away from the square, the air grew thick with promise and anxiety, leaving the moon to wonder what awaited them in the murky depths ahead. The edge of undaunted swamp lay shrouded in a thick, oppressive mist that curled dull the gnarled trees, their twisted roots reaching out its skeletal fingers into the murky depths below. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, mingling with an inexplicable tension that seeped into Quentin Tamsin bones. As he stepped carefully over a knotted branch, his heart thudded against his ribs, each beat a reminder of the weight he carried. His past failures, the community suffering, and his resolve to confront the unknown. The distant calls of unseen creatures echoed through the fog, sending a shiver down his spine, but Quentin pressed on, determined to unravel the secrets seeding the swamp to the illness plaguing his town, even the shadows whispered warnings he could scarcely bear to acknowledge. Quentin paused, brushing his fingers against the rough bark of a nearby tree, tracing the strange markings carved deep into its surface. The symbols seemed almost alive, pulsating with a dark energy as if they were remnants of ancient rituals, steeped in sorrow and despair. He squinted, trying to decipher their meaning, when a low rustle broke the stillness. A wind molded into existence? From the shadows, his stocky build framed against the swirling mist. Hawke emerged, his piercing blue eyes locking onto Quentin with a chilling intensity. "You shouldn't be in," Thorne said, his voice a gravelly warning that sent tendrils of unease through the air. "This place holds secrets better left buried." Oh. Quentin straightened, the tension coiling in his stomach as he met Thorne's gaze. The man commanding presence loomed over him, but Quentin couldn't back down. "I'm not afraid of the past, Thorne. Too many lives are at stake. We need to understand what happened dead to help the community heal," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. He ground his teeth, feeling the weight of Thorne and disapproval pressing against him, like the murky water lapping at his boots. The silence hung heavy between them, filled with unsaid truths and shared histories. The swamp serving as a silent witness to their standoff. Thorne's expression hardened, the corners of his mouth tightening into a gin line. "You think you can unravel it all? You'll only find pain. That swamp doesn't forgive, Quentin. It preys on the weak, and you're not as strong as you believe." He shot back, his tone slicing through the mist like a knife. Quentin clenched his fists, the fire of determination igniting within him. He took a step forward, allowing the cold moisture from the air to seep into his skin, reminding him of everything he had to lose. "Maybe reflossum. I can culture up with stuff." The air crackled with tension. Quentin held Thorne's gaze, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like the thick fog enveloping the swamp. With a resolute nod, Quentin turned back to the twisted trees, ready to dive headfirst into the shadows of the past that had haunted him for so long. He felt the resolve of a man crossing a threshold, leaving behind the chains of self-doubt that had held it captive. The swamp beckoned him deeper, its secrets waiting to be unearthed, and as he moved forward, the mist parted slightly, revealing a path that had long been obscured. Somewhere within that darkness lay the truth, and perhaps the redemption he so desperately sought. The low hum of the evening settled over Quentin Tamsin home, a modest structure nestled on the outskirts of town. Shadows danced on the walls from the flickering light of a fiddle lamp, its warm glow barely penetrating the encroaching dusk. Outside, the faint rustle of leaves whispered secrets only the swamp could understand, as the air thickened with the earthy aroma of damp soil and decay. Quentin sat at his kitchen table, fingers tracing the contours of an old crumpled map, his brow furrowed in concentration. A quiet unease stirred within him, a storm of thoughts that circled like vultures above a carcass, each one a reminder of the ghosts he sought to confront. An unexpected ring sliced through the stillness, a sound far too urgent for the evening languor, making him jump as adrenaline coursed through his veins. He hesitated before picking in the phone, an instinctive reluctance surfacing in his throat. "Hello." He managed, his voice a shaky whisper against the backdrop of silence. The voice on the other end crackled with intensity, dark and rich, sick the damp earth out.
Quentin Tamsin?
"You need to listen carefully. There's something in the swamp. Something your community has ignored for too long. The illness. It connected to dark secrets hidden beneath the surface." A chill traced its way down his spine, his heart racing when the voice continued, weaving a tale of dread that felt all too real. Each word ignited a sense of duty within him, a call to action he couldn't ignore, even if it meant confronting his deepest fears. "What do you know?" Quentin urged, his grip tightening around the receiver. The urgency in the stranger voice deepened, suffused with a gravity that felt almost palpable. "More than anyone else, I promise. But you need to be prepared. This isn't just a journey into the swamp. It's a confrontation with the past. Your past." Quentin breath hitch, the echoes of his failures clashing violently with the man he aspired to be. Images of the client he couldn't save flooded his mind, and he swallowed hard, feeling the weight of guilt clawing at him once more. "Who are you?" he asked, desperation creeping into his tone as the stranger paused. A heavy silence filled the gap, laden with unspoken truths. Finally, the voice replied, cold as the mist that clung to the swamp edge. "That's not important, Quentin. What matters is that you go now. The swamp will reveal what you need to see, but you must face it head-on, or the darkness will consume you too." He felt a swell of resolve, ignited by fear and a flickering ember of hope. This was his chance to find redemption, but at what cost? The swamp loomed larger in his mind, an impending journey etched with danger and revelation, setting him on a path he could no longer ignore. As the call ended, the silence enveloping him felt oppressive, almost suffocating. Quentin set the phone down with trembling fingers, the weight of the moment crashing over him like a wave. The shadows in his home seemed to close in, mirroring the turmoil raging within. Yet, beneath the fear, a flicker of determination ignited a realization that he couldn't continue to hide from his past. He did his things with hurried precision, the cool leather of his sachet a comforting weight against his side. Each step towards the door felt like a pledge of commitment, a promise to confront the darkness lurking within the swamp. The night stretched before him, thick and foreboding, and as he stepped the chilling mist enveloped it, beckoning him toward an uncertain fate. The edge of undaunted swamp loomed before Quentin Tamsin, a morbid landscape where twisted trees clawed at the leaden sky, their gnarled roots submerged in a foul, stagnant pool. An oppressive mist hung in the air, thick and damp, wrapping him in a clammy embrace that made each breath feel labored. The distant croaks of unseen creatures punctuated the silence, echoing the unease that gripped his heart. With each cautious step, the soft squelch of wet earth beneath his worn leather boots reverberated in his ears, a reminder of the murky depths he was about to plunge into. This pace, teeming with ancient secrets, was a threshold between the safety of the village and the perilous unknown. He tightened his grip on the sachet slung over his shoulder, steeling himself for the confrontation that lay ahead, desperate for answers about the illness plaguing the locals. As Quentin drew to a small gathering of villagers, their hushed whispers mingled with the damp air, a chorus of fear that sent a shiver down his spine. He took a deep breath, trying to project calm despite the tumult of anxiety swirling within. "Excuse me," he began, his voice steady yet tentative, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through the mist. "I need to help. I need to understand what's happening. Can you tell me about the sickness?" The villagers exchanged wary glances, eyes wide with suspicion, their bodies taut with tension. One man, stocky and imposing, spat on the ground, a clear gesture of disdain.
"What would to you, outsider?
"This swamp ain't for you,"
They cursed.
"Stay away," Quentin's heart sank. At the hostility in their voices, a palpable wall that rose between him and the desperate search for truth. He could feel the weight of their mistrust, heavy and suffocating like the mist surrounding him. "I understand your fears," he pressed on, his voice a mix of empathy and urgency. "But I can't help without your stories. The illness is taking lives. Don't you want to end it?" But the villagers shifted uneasily, their eyes darting toward the shadows of the swamp, as if the very trees were listening. The air thickened with unspoken warnings, and Quentin felt the sting of isolation bite deeper. They turned their backs, whispering warnings that spiraled into the distance like the curling fog, a timeless reminder of their ancient fears. A pang of frustration coursed through Quentin, igniting a fire in his chest. He stepped forward, the squelch of the mud underfoot echoing his determination.
"I won't leave until I get answers."
"You can't continue to suffer in silence. It must be something you can tell me." His voice resonated with a quiet intensity that cut through the oppressive atmosphere. But the villagers remained silent, their silhouettes retreating into the mist, leaving him standing alone on the edge of the abyss. As the last of their figures vanished, a deep sense of purpose anchored him. He was here for a reason, and their fear only fueled his resolve to unearth the truth lurking beneath the murky waters. The swamp yawned before him, a living entity filled with dark whispers and hidden dangers. Quentin's breath came in sharp bursts, mingling with the dampness of the air as he scanned the treacherous terrain. The village's mistrust tightened around in Axerchange. The village's mistrust tightened around in Mekanus. The village's mistrust tightened around in mercenary. He turned back to the darkness, the jagged silhouettes of the trees framing his resolve. It was a truth buried in, and he was determined to dig it up, no matter the cost. With the village's whispered warnings ringing in his ears, Quentin took a tentative step forward, his pulse quickening at the sound of the swamp shifting beneath him. The path ahead was fraught with peril, yet he could not turn back. The whispers of the swamp seemed to beckon him onward, promising answers shrouded in shadows. He paused, glancing back one last time at the retreating figures, their fear a stark reminder of the stakes at tat. If he could not reach them, perhaps he could still save the ones suffering deeper within. Clenching his jaw, he pressed into the gloom, each step a silent vow that he would uncover the truth, whatever darkness awaited. A sullen fog draped the edge of undaunted swamp, wrapping its tendrils like the gnarled trees that loomed like ancient sentinels, their roots clawing into the murky depths below. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, mingling with the faint, sweet musk of moss that cloaked the stones and trunks alike. Quentin Tamsin moved cautiously through the clearing, his worn leather boots sinking into the soft ground with each step, the squelch echoing in the stillness. His heart raced, not from the oppressive atmosphere that surrounded him, but from the weight of his own unresolved past. The eerie silence was punctuated only by the distant croak of frogs and the rustle of unseen creatures, a chorus that seemed to beckon him further into the swamp's secrets, urging him to confront what lay ahead. As Quentin pressed on, he hit a large stone half buried in the undergrowth, its surface slick with moss and inscribed with cryptic symbols. He bent down, brushing his fingers across the cool, wet stone, tracing the patterns that seemed to dance before his eyes. A shiver cascaded down his spine as he deciphered the inscription's tales of sorrow and betrayal that mirrored his own failures. The weight of self-doubt surged through him, filling the hollow spaces in his chest. Memories of his past mistakes, the haunting echoes of a client loss, claw at him like the gnarled roots of the trees, relentless and unforgiving. "Why didn't you save her?" he whispered into the mist, as if the swamp itself might answer back. His voice was barely a breath, nearly swallowed by the dense air. He felt the stone coolness seep into his palm, grounding him even as his mind spiraled deeper into regret. A knot twisted in his stomach, the familiar ache of guilt pressing against his ribs like a vise. Yet beneath the darkness, a flicker of determination ignited. This moment, this stone. It was a chance to redefine his path, to confront his fears rather than flee from them. Quentin's fingers clenched on the stone, its rough surface digging into his skin as he stood resolute. The fog seemed to pull back slightly, as if the swamp was listening, as if it understood the burden he carried. He took a breath, deep and steady, allowing the cool mist to fill his lungs. "I can't go back," he murmured, speaking not to the stone, but to the pieces of himself he had lost. "Need to face this." The realization settled over him like the fading mist. He was no longer just a therapist grappling with his failures. He was a man ready to confront the shadows that haunted him. The swamp released a low, mournful sound, as if echoing his resolve. Quentin straightened, the weight of the stone suddenly feeling less like a burden and more like a talisman of his commitment. He glanced one last time at the inscriptions, their tales anchoring him against the tide of doubt, before he turned back toward the deeper recesses of the swamp. The journey ahead would be easy, but as he stepped forward, he felt an unfamiliar lightness in his chest, a whisper of hope threading through the murky air. Quentin's resolve hardened with each step. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, yet the ancient legends etched into the stone stirred within him a burgeoning courage. He could not change the past, but he could shape his future. With the weight of the stone clutched tightly in his hand, he ventured forth, ready to confront the shadows within the swamp and within himself. As the fog began to shift, revealing a narrow trail leading deeper into the heart of undaunted swamp, Quentin knew he was not just walking into the unknown, he was stepping into a reckoning. The deeper he ventured into the swamp, the more alive he felt, the pulse of the earth beneath him resonating with every determined footfall. The weight of the stone in his sachich felt like a promise, one he was ready to uphold. The shadows whispered secrets, and the swamp beckoned, yet Quentin welcomed it all with open arms. He was not merely seeking redemption, he was claiming his purpose. Ahead, the path forked, branching into two equally dark avenues, each obscured by the looming fog. Taking a steadying breath, Quentin hesitated, sensing that one of those paths would lead him closer to the truth he sought, and perhaps to the redemption he so desperately needed. He squared his shoulders, his decision looming as heavy as the mist above, knowing that whatever awaited him next would test everything he had just discovered about himself. The air was thick with humidity. Clinging to Quentin Tamsin's skin like a second layer of clothing, he stepped into the decrepit shack, its wooden frame sagging under the weight of years and secrets. Shadows danced across the walls, flickering in the dim light as the last vestiges of day surrendered to the encroaching twilight. Outside, the gnarled trees loomed like guardians of the swamp, their twisted roots emerging from the mud, while a thin mist coiled out his ankles, whispering of forgotten tales. In his forsaken place, Quentin's heart raced, anticipation mingling with dread, for he could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, urging him to uncover whatever lay hidden beneath the rotted floorboards. Quentin knelt beside a splintered table where a scattering of old letters lay, their edges yellow-eyed and brittle. He reached out cautiously, brushing his fingers over the delicate script, heart quickening as he deciphered the words. They spoke of betrayal, of alliances forged in darkness, and a name that sent a chill spiraling down his spine. Margaret Hawke. The familiar sting of resentment flared within him. She was the very embodiment of the past he sought to escape. Just then, the creaking of the shack door broke the silence, and Thorne Hawke stepped in, his presence filling the space like thunderclouds before a storm. Thorne surveyed the disarray, his piercing blue eyes narrowing. "What have you found?" he asked, a hint of impatience threading his voice, as if he were all too familiar with the ghosts that linger dead. Quentin hesitated, every instinct urging him to hide the truth, yet he felt the pull of honesty. Letters. They connect us. To him, to the illness. I think his throat tightened, words caught "are you?" Words caught the damp air in his lungs. Thorne stepped close, the scent of wet earth and salt trailing behind him, coaxing Quentin into the depths of his own resolve. You can't turn away from this, Quentin. The past is not just your burden, it's a chain that binds us all. You must confront it, Thorne urged, his voice steady, a contrast to the tempest brewing inside Quentin's mind. The mentor's unyielding gaze bore into it, igniting a flicker of resolve amidst the fear swirling like mist around his thoughts. Quentin straightened, swallowing hard, fear and determination wrestling within him. He could see the path ahead, but it was fraught with sharp thorns. His confrontation with Margaret was imminent, and the stakes had escalated beyond his previous understanding. As he locked eyes with Thorne, Quentin felt the weight of his mentored words wrap round in like armor. The shack, once a mere relic of the past, now pulsated with the promise of revelation, each letter in his hen a roadmap to the truth he feared yet craved. Would he find redemption in the confrontation, or would the shadows of history engulf him? Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, a foreboding symphony echoing the turmoil within him. With a deep breath, Quentin steeled himself, the echoes of ancient rituals lingering in the air, knowing he had to face his fears head-on, for both his sake and the community that depended on him. The time for discovery had come, and there was no turning back. The heart of Undaunted Swamp lay shrouded in a heavy mist, thick as sorrow and clinging to the gnarled trees that twisted like ancient sentinels above the murky water. Shadows danced beneath the surface, hiding the secrets that whispered through the air, an edge of despair rising from the depths. Quentin Tamsin stepped cautiously among the roots. His heart pounded a rhythm of uncertainty, the scent of damp earth and decay mingling in his nostrils. The oppressive atmosphere pressed down on him, matched only by the weight of his past mistakes. Yet he was, seeking answers, his resolve warring with the swirling fears that threatened to overwhelm him. Through the haze, he petted the figure he dreaded and needed to confront. Thorne Hawke, a man whose presence was as commanding as the swamp was haunting. Quentin's throat tightened as he approached, the sound of his footsteps muffled by the soft, wet earth. Thorne stood defiantly, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips beneath the salt and pepper hair slicked back with an almost deliberate arrogance.
I've seen you, Quentin.
Thought you'd drowned in your own guilt, or did you finally grow a spine? The taunt sliced through the misty air, sharper than the chill that gripped Quentin's bones. He clenched his fists at his sides, torn between the urge to flee and the desperate need to confront his tormentor. "I'm not dead to play games, Thorne," Quentin replied, striving for authority but feeling the tremor in his voice betray him. He stepped close, the murky water lapping at his boots, each step sinking deeper into his insecurities. "You owe the town answers. You've let this curse fester long enough. People are suffering because of you." Thorne's laughter rumbled like distant thunder, filled with mockery. "Suffering? Don't make me laugh. You think you can just waltz in and demand accountability? Look at you, nothing but a shadow of a man, haunted by ghosts of your failures. You've always been too soft, Quentin. That's why you lost her. That's why you'll lose again." Each word wrapped around Quentin at the mist, choking him, reminding him of all the moments he had failed those who relied on him. His breath quickened, heart racing with the weight of the memories that threatened to drown him. A client's desperate plea, a life forever altered. As thorn-piercing blue eyes bore into him, Quentin felt his courage falter, the swamp-dark energy wrapping round him like a shroud. He turned slightly, the urge to retreat almost overwhelming, his mind racing with self-doubt and regret. "I didn't come made to relive that," he started, but the conviction in his voice dwindled like the fading light through the trees. But Thorne wasn't finished. "You think you're the hero? Come to save the day.
You can't even save yourself.
You think the townsfolk will rally behind a man who couldn't save a seal life? You're just a frightened boy pretending to be a leader. Get out of my swamp, Tamsin, before you drown in your own self-pity." With a final derisive laugh, he turned away, leaving Quentin grappling with the shadows of doubt once more, feeling more vulnerable than them. Yet, in that moment of despair, something ignited within him. His encounter was not the end. It was a painful reminder. He would gather his strength and allies, no longer willing to be just a shadow. His resolve solidified, a flicker of determination in his heart. Propel him into the depths of the swamp darkness, where he would find the power to confront his past once and for all. As Thorne's laughter faded into the gloom, Quentin felt the swamp close in and him, the weight of his vulnerability pressing heavy against his chest. The shadows whispered, taunting him with memories of pain and loss, yet within that haunting embrace, a flicker of hope sparked anew. He could no longer cower in the dark. He would rise, seek the allies he had long turned away from, and prepare for the reckoning that awaited. Each step away from Thorne was a step to understanding his own worth, igniting a fire within that would be easily extinguished. The swamp held its secrets tightly, but Quentin's resolve began to pulse with the promise of redemption, a promise he would rake again. The sacred grove emerged, a hidden heart in the belly of the swamp, cloaked in an ethereal mist that twisted down the gnarled trunks of ancient trees, their roots clawing at the earth like desperate hands. A silence enveloped the air, pregnant with reverence and the weight of long-buried secrets. Quentin stood at the entrance, his heart thudding against his ribs, each pulse echoing the uncertainty swirling in his chest. The damp earth squelched beneath his worn leather boots, and the faint scent of decay mingled with the lush green of moss draping the tree limbs. He felt the air chain thickening with an intangible sorrow that pulled him deeper into the grove. His breath, hitching aid, recalled the choices that had led in me. This place, once a refuge, now felt like a shroud for the ghosts of his past. A past he could no longer ignore. Quentin's fingers trembled as he traced the weather-red markings on an ancient tree, symbols that spoke of curses and lost souls. Memories flooded his mind,
Prophecies of those he had failed, their voices echoing in his conscience like mournful wails.
A branch snapped underfoot, and he nearly jumped, turning to see an apparition of shadows shift among the foliage. "What do you seek, Quentin?" The voice was calm, yet it resonated with authority belonging to Thorne Hawke, his mentor. Thorne stepped forward, the mist swirling round him, emphasizing his imposing presence. It was a flicker of understanding in his piercing blue eyes, as if he had known this moment would come. "You can't outrun what you've done. You must face." Quentin clenched his jaw, his throat tightening maids. The reality of his past stretched before him like a chasm. "I was supposed to help them. I didn't see the signs, Thorne. They trusted me, and I failed them." His voice dropped to a whisper filled with shame. Thorne moved low, the air between them charged with the weight of unspoken truths.
Guilt and be a guide, Quentin.
"It shows where healing is needed, but it could also blind you to the path forward. You have the power to change the narrative, to mend what was broken." As the words sank in, Quentin felt the ground shift beneath him, a tangible connection to the pain that had seeped into the very earth of the swamp. Overwhelmed, he sank to his knees, the cool dampness of the soil grounding him even as despair threatened to swallow him whole. Tears brimmed in his haggard eyes as he pressed his palms against the ground, feeling the pulse of the swamp, the ache of lives intertwined with his own failures. "What if it's too late?" he murmured, his voice cracking. Thorne knelt beside him, a steadying presence, his hand resting on Quentin's shoulder. "It never too late. The first step is to acknowledge the pain, to let it guide you toward redemption." With an anguished breath, Quentin glimpsed a flicker of hope igniting in the depths of his heart. The swamp, with all its darkness, was also alive with possibility. He raised his gaze to meet Thorne, the flicker rose into a flame of determination. I won't let their suffering be in vain. I'll find a way to heal this place, to heal myself. Thorne nodded, a small smile breaking through his otherwise stoic demeanor. Then rise, Quentin. The path ahead is treacherous, but you are not alone. Together, we will face the curse of the swamp and the shadows of your past. With resolve settling over him like a protective cloak, Quentin stood, ready to confront the intertwining fates that lay ahead. The edge of undaunted swamp lay cloaked in shadows, the gnarled trees standing like sentinels over the murky waters, their twisted roots protruding like skeletal fingers reaching into an abyss of darkness. An oppressive mist curled Quentin Tamsin ankles, a damp shroud that whispered secrets of past failures and present fears. The air was thick, pregnant with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves, an aroma that clung to his clothes and skin like a heavy haze. He could hear the distant calls of unseen creatures, a haunting melody that echoed through the fog, amplifying the isolation he felt within himself. In his secluded part of the swamp, far from the watchful eyes of the community he sought to heal, Quentin felt the weight of his despair press down like the heavy air around him. Quentin's fingers traced the outlines of the compass tattoo on his wrist, a small anchor in a sea of turbulent thoughts. Memories surged like the murky waters around him, the hopeful faces of those he had failed to save, each visage a reminder of his perceived inadequacies. He swallowed hard, the taste of bile rising in his throat. Would he be able to rise from the ashes of his failures? Through clenched teeth, he whispered into the swirling mist, "I'm not strong enough for this. I can't carry the weight of their hopes. I let them down." A sudden rustle in the underbrush pulled his attention. He turned, guilt gnawing at him like a feral creature, as if it had taken physical form to taunt him. The swamp was alive, its sounds amplifying his turmoil. He could almost hear Thorne's voice, steady and grounding, urging him to face his fears. Quentin's breath quickened, and he clenched his fists, trying to harness the flicker of resolve that sparked within. "You can't hide forever," he murmured, knowing the truth behind those words was a bitter pill to swallow. He needed to confront the darkness, the same darkness that had haunted him since that fateful day. As dawn approached, the first rays of sunlight pierced through the fog, illuminating the twisted branches overhead like ethereal fingers reaching for hope. Quentin felt the warmth slowly seep into his bones, a reminder that light could exist even in the most secluded corners of despair. He straightened his back, shoulders squared against the weight of his memories, and inhaled deeply, the scent of the swamp shifting from oppressive earth to the tender promise of renewal. "Maybe I still fight," he whispered, the words feeling foreign yet cathartic as they escaped his lips. The swamp, with all its darkness, was not just a burial ground for his failures, but also a crucible for transformation. A gust of wind stirred the mist, swirling round him like a defiant spirit urging him onward. As Quentin's resolve solidified, he could see a path forming ahead. Each step would be for those he could not save, for the community that still depended on him. He turned back toward the heart of the swamp where Thorne awaited, ready to embrace the confrontation that loomed. The past would define him. He would fight for himself and those who looked to him for strength. One last glance at the encroaching dawn fueled his determination. He was ready to face whatever awaited him. Emerging from the shadows of his retreat, Quentin felt the pulse of the swamp beneath him, a rhythmic reminder of fife and resilience. He stepped forward, the ground soft and yielding under his worn leather boots, each movement echoing a silent promise. A final breath to steady his racing heart, and then he was moving, each step a declaration of his intent. As he approached Thorne, the old man's piercing blue gaze met his, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Quentin squared his shoulders, ready to tackle the darkness that threatened not only his own heart, but the very soul of the community he sought to heal. The confrontation awaited, and he knew this time he would falter. The village square buzzed with an electric tension, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and the faint decay of the nearby undaunted swamp. Gnarled trees loomed beyond the cobbled path, their twisted roots reaching into the murky depths like lost souls. In the heart of this gathering, Quentin Tamsin stood tall, his athletic frame silhouetted against the fading light of dusk. Shadows danced across the worried faces of the villagers, their eyes wide with fear, mirroring the oppressive mist that clung to the perimeter of the square. He could feel their unease, a palpable weight pressing down on his shoulders. Yet there was a flicker of determination in him, ignited by the urgent plight of those he had come to cherish. This was his moment to lead, to weave hope into the fabric of despair. "The swamp has cursed us for too long," Quentin's voice rang out, steady and fierce, cutting through the anxious murmurs. He stepped close to the gathering, his haggard eyes sweeping over the crowd, seeking connection in their shared dread. "You've seen it? The sickness, claiming our loved ones. It is not just a tale spun from fear. It is our reality. We must confront this darkness again." The lingering scent of dampness in the air mingled with the faint note of desperation, and he felt the crowd breathing synchronize, a collective heartbeat thrumming with uncertainty. A man shot up in the throng, and a woman with a sun-weathered face shouted, "And what if we fail, Quentin? What if confronting it only makes it worse?" Her voice trembled, laden with the weight of past losses. In that moment, silence enveloped the square, the fear palpable as every pair of eyes turned to him, seeking an answer that lay somewhere between hope and despair. Quentin's heart raced, but he steadied his breath, remembering the scars of his past failures. We may falter, yes, but in our unity there lies strength. We can't afford to let fear paralyze us. If we don't act now, we risk losing everything we hold dear.
Just behind him, Thorne Hawke stepped forward, his presence commanding, the salt and pepper of his hair catching the last rays of sunlight.
Quentin speaks the truth. This swamp holds our fears, but it also holds our resilience. We have survived worse than this, haven't we? His piercing blue gaze scanned the crowd, igniting a spark of defiance as he raised his tattooed forearm. Together, we reclaim ours. Stand with us, not as individuals, but as a community. The air crackled with a newfound energy, a flicker of determination igniting it. The villagers exchanged uncertain yet hopeful glances. The oppressive weight of fear began to lift, replaced by a fragile but bold resolve. Quentin felt the shift, the pulse of bravery coursing through the crowd like the first stirring of dawn breaking over a long night. He stepped back, allowing Thorne to take the lead, the elder voice coaxing the villagers forward into the light. A testament to their shared strength. Each person's resolve solidified in that moment, but as Quentin looked toward the dark edge of the swamp, the gnawing uncertainty lingered. Deep within him, a whisper of doubt remained, threading through the rallying spirit. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with danger, but for the first time, their collective fear felt like a blanket they could rip apart, revealing the possibility of hope beneath it. As the crowd began to murmur in agreement, Quentin's heart raced, not just with hope, but with the looming awareness of what lay ahead. Together, they would venture into the swamp, unraveling its secrets, but each step forward would be a confrontation with their deepest fears. It caught Thorne's eye, a silent vow passing between them. Their resolve was now intertwined. The villagers, emboldened by newfound courage, began to chant, their voices echoing in the twilight. Yet Quentin turned to face the encroaching mist, A chilling breeze swept through the square, and the oppressive weight of the swamp loomed larger than N, a reminder that the true battle was only just beginning. The heart of undaunted swamp pulsed with a heartbeat all its own. The fog thickening like a shroud around Quentin Tamsin, he stepped deeper into its embrace. Gnarled trees bent over him, their twisted roots creeping into the murky water like skeletal fingers grasping for purchase. An unsettling stillness enveloped the air, broken only by the distant rustle of unseen creatures hiding among the foliage and the soft lapping of the water against the banks. Quentin's heart hammered in his chest, each beat reverberating against his ribs, as he clutched his sachet, the weight of his therapy notes grounding him in a reality he feared was slipping away. Today, he would confront Thorne Hawke, his nemesis, the man who represented every failure Quentin had tried to outrun. The swamp whispered secrets, its dampness clinging to his skin, heightening his senses, urging him to remember why he had come. The sound of a low chuckle echoed through the fog, resonating like a lingering ghost. Look who decided to brave the heart of the swamp. Thorne's voice sliced through the air, rich with mockery and confidence. He emerged from the mist like a specter, his stocky build framed against the twisted trees, the faint glint of his piercing blue eyes cutting through the shadows. Quentin squared his shoulders, feeling the heat of anger rise within him, but he forced his voice to remain steady.
I'm not called to play games, Thorne.
This ends today. Thorne stepped though, the fog curling in like an omen. Ends? Oh, Quentin, you still don't understand.
This swamp, it's a part of you now.
All your failures, your fears, they feed off this place. You can't escape it, can you? A cruel smile danced on his lips, and Quentin's breath quickened, the shadows of his past clawing at his mind, dredging on memories he had tried to bury. But he refused to let Thorne see him falter. He straightened, locking eyes with his adversary. You're wrong. I've learned to confront my demons, not hide from them. With a sudden flourish, Thorne gestured to the trees, their twisted forms looming ominously. Is that why you're so eager to face me? Or is it 'cause you know you'll never truly escape the guilt? You enchant and preach, but deep down, you're just a scared little therapist playing hero. You failed them, and you failed yourself. Each word struck as a blow, but Quentin clenched his fists, shoving down the rising tide of panic swirling in his chest. The swamp-blot, dank air wrapped around him, urging him to push back, to stand his ground. I may have failed once, but I won't let you drag anyone else into your darkness. He took a steadying breath, his resolve hardening. Thorne's grin widened, the shadows dancing across his face, revealing the hollowness behind his bravado. Then prove it, Quentin. Show me you're not just a shadow in this swamp. Come and get your redemption. Quentin felt the weight of the swamp pressing against him, but a spark ignited within Aranofi, a fierce determination to break free from the cycle of fear that had once bound him. With his swift movement, he reached into his sachet, pulling out a small vial filled with a glowing liquid, the essence of hope he had dared from the community. I will not be a victim of the past, Thorne. This is my choice, my stand against you. The swamp seemed to hold its breath that he lifted the vial, the light illuminating the thick mist, a beacon against the swirling darkness. Closing paragraph. The moment was electric, the swamp around them vibrating with the tension of the impending conflict. Quentin raised the vial higher, its glow piercing through Thorne's mocking demeanor, illuminating the fear lurking in his blue eyes for an instant. With a shout, he poured the contents onto the ground, the essence spreading like a shimmering web of light. Thorne reeled back, his bravado faltering as the swamp reacted, the fog swirling chaotically, as if it sensed the shift in power. It was no longer just a confrontation, it was a declaration. Quentin felt the surge of his newfound courage washing over him, and as the shadows began to retreat, his voice rose above the chaos. "I won't let you take this from me." The battle had only begun, but for the first time Quentin felt the weight of his past lift slightly, and with it, the promise of a future unmarred by Thorne's darkness. The moment was electric, the swamp around them vibrating with the tension of the impending conflict. Quentin raised the vial higher, its glow piercing through Thorne's mocking demeanor, illuminating the fear lurking in his blue eyes for an instant. With a shout, he poured the contents onto the ground, the essence spreading like a shimmering web of light. Thorne reeled back, his bravado faltering as the swamp reacted, the fog swirling chaotically, as if it sensed the shift in power. It was no longer just a confrontation, it was a declaration. Quentin felt the surge of his newfound courage washing over him, and as the shadows began to retreat, his voice rose above the chaos. "I won't let you take this from me." The battle had only begun, but for the first time Quentin felt the weight of his past lift slightly, and with it, the promise of a future unmarred by Thorne's darkness. The clearing at the swamp-pent center was a place of foreboding beauty, where the water glimmered like shards of broken glass beneath the tangled limbs of ancient trees. A thick mist clung to the ground, curling out gnarled roots that jutted upwards like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. Quentin Tamsin stood at the water edge, heart pounding, the weight of his past failures pressing heavily upon him. He could feel Hawke's presence even before the man emerged from the shadows, a dark figure framed by the oppressive gloom. The air was thick with the scent of decay and damp earth, each breath a reminder of the haunting choices that had led him. Yet somewhere within that suffocating dread, a flicker of resolve ignited, urging him to confront the specter of his enemy, one who embodied the darkness he wished to disperse. Quentin's voice trembled as he called out, "Thorne, we don't have to do this. You can choose a different path." His words hung in the air, swallowed by the silence that followed, broken only by the distant croak of a bullfrog. Thorne stepped into the clearing, his stocky face illuminated by a shaft of pale light. The piercing blue of his eyes glinted with malice, a hawk poised to strike. "You think you can change me, Quentin," Thorne spat, his voice low and gravelly. "You're still the same pathetic man who failed his client. Redemption isn't for the likes of us." The tension swirled, thick as the mist, wrapping round them like a noose. "That way you're wrong," Quentin shouted, his desperation breaking through the fog of fear. He stepped toes, his voice softening, almost pleading. "I've learned from my failures. I'm here to heal, not to harm. If you let go of this hate, we can find peace." The swamp seemed to hold its breath, the water rippling in answer to his fervent plea. Thorne's jaw clenched, uncertainty flashing across his rugged features, but rage quickly replaced it. "Peace? In this Kassing Vermitjische waftigt Arfiers.
Redeeming dysfunction, Elliot.
In this Kassing Vermitjische waftigt Arfiers. In this Kassing Vermitjische waftigt Arfiers. In this Kassing Vermitjische waftigt Arfiers. Almsaid. You're dreaming." The battle of wills intensified, their words weaving a fragile thread of hope amidst the darkness. As they stood locked in their fierce exchange, the atmosphere around them began to shift. The air grew electric, charged with the weight of their confrontation. The mist swirled more violently, as if the swamp itself was reacting to their conflict. Quentin felt a swell of determination surging through him, realizing that this was not just a fight against Thorne, but against the swirling shadows of his own past. With every ounce of courage he could muster, he continued, "I'm willing to forgive you, Thorne. But you have to let go of the pain, just as I am trying to let go of mine. The water shimmered ominously, reflecting the turmoil of their hearts. Sated bubbled and churned beneath the surface, heralding a transformation that neither man could foresee. A sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, stirring the mist into a frenzy as Thorne paused, caught between fury and something more vulnerable. For a brief moment, the flicker of hesitation in his piercing gaze suggested a crack in his armor, a glimmer of the man he could have been. But before Quentin could seize the moment, Thorne's expression hardened, and he began to retreat, the shadows closing in and him. You want forgiveness? Then be prepared to fight for it, he snarled, stepping back into the murky depths of the swamp. Quentin's heart raced, not just in fear, but in hope, knowing that this battle had only just begun. As the swamp sighed around him, he realized that perhaps the path to redemption was not a solitary one. It was a journey he must navigate with the very man who had haunted him for years. The village square, once a desolate expanse overshadowed by the nearby undaunted swamp, now shimmer arnac a newly polished gem in the early morning light. Golden rays painted the cobblestones, catching the vibrant hues of flowers newly planted in the cracks, their sweet fragrance mingling with the crisp air. Laughter rang out as children rained the fountain, their joyous voices rising like a melody. At the heart of it all stood Quentin Tamsin, tall and slightly wiry, his dark brown hair tousled by a gentle breeze. As he surveyed the scene, a cautious smile tugged at his lips, knowing that the curse that had once strangled their spirits had finally been lifted, provided space for reconciliation and new beginnings in the community he had long felt estranged from. Quentin felt the warmth of the sun on his back, a welcome contrast to the chill that had lingered in his bones for far too long. As villagers death, their faces alight with hope, he patted Thorne Hawke, his mentor, standing to the side with the look of approval. The burly man's piercing blue eyes softened as he met Quentin's gaze, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. A group of villagers approached, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and wariness, remnants of the past echoing in their demeanor. We've done it, haven't we? Quentin breathed, his voice barely above a whisper, yet the weight of it hung in the air like a prayer. But this is just the beginning, lad, Thorne replied, stepping to, the roughness of his voice a comfort. You've shown them that healing is possible, but they'll need time, and you. Quentin nodded, his heart swelling with a mix of anxiety and determination. He took a step forward, the dust of the square rising to meet his worn leather boots, and offered a tentative smile to the group, whose faces held that hope and hesitation. We're grateful, Quentin, one elder spoke, his voice trembling like the leaves on the trees. But can we truly leave behind what the swamp has taken from us? The question hung heavy, a specter haunting the newly brightened square. Quentin inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of his past failures, but he met the elder gaze, his resolve hardening. We carry our scars forward, but they need not define us. Together, we can rewrite our story. The villagers exchanged glances, a flicker of understanding passing among them, as Quentin's words began to weave a fragile thread of connection. As the laughter of children danced in the air and the sun climbed higher, Quentin felt the pulse of the community around him, once a mere act of his own isolation, now a vibrant heartbeat. It was a moment suspended in time, a fragile piece that promised the possibility of something greater. Thorne's proud smile lingered in the periphery, a silent reminder that the path to healing was no longer a solitary journey. For the first time, Quentin felt a sense of belonging, the weight of his guilt lifting at the mist retreating from the swamp. Amid the laughter and light, he glimpsed the dawn of a new chapter for both himself and the community. Yet the shadows of the past whispered still, hinting at challenges yet to come. Yet as he looked around the square, a flicker of uncertainty crept back into his heart. The villagers were smiling, but he could sense the undercurrents of their fears, the scars of the swamp still fresh in their memories. Quentin clenched his fists, the tattoo of the compass on his wrist a reminder of his journey thus far. He could not afford to falter now. They needed him to lead, to confront the lingering darkness that loomed just beyond their joy. The celebration carried on, but beneath the surface, the question lingered. Was the curse truly lifted, or would the swamp demand its price once more? He turned to Thorne, seeking reassurance. But the mentor's gaze was focused on the horizon, where the sun battled the shadows, hinting at the unknown challenges yet to unfold. Quentin's heart raced, not just with anticipation of what was to come, but with the realization that their fight was far from over.